In order to benefit all sentient beings, let's generate bodhicitta. During listening to the Dharma, let's properly listen. This instructions on meditation. We are going to use 4 classes to learn this text. Yesterday we had 1 class, and today is the 2nd, tomorrow and day after. In total, we only have 4 classes. In fact, this kind of meditation in the West, even the East, what we call yoga or meditation, there are different ways of describing it. I think there are people in the West, the definition of so-called meditation is a bit different. What we can describe this kind of meditation is the meditation about seeing the Buddha. This is one of the most important methods of meditation. With or without belief, by observing the Buddha's image and meditate, this could bring great benefit. In the West, what they call meditation, there are only a few methods that's taken out and then transformed into a method that the Westerners could understand, and then they call it meditation. In fact, yoga comes from India. Yoga, Mahayoga, Ati Yoga. Inside of yoga, there are different categories. So this is the yoga in Buddhism. In Tibetan Buddhism, that's how we learned the yoga or meditation. In meditation, there's so many ways of relaxation. So this one is a bit different than that kind of relaxation. Now, what we call meditation, by relying upon the image of the Buddha, or use the image of the Buddha as the object of our meditation, is a bit different. Of course, as Buddhists, let it be Han Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, or Tibetan Buddhism, within different schools of Buddhism, within different sects. In fact, all of them can use this particular method. Because our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, is of no difference to any of the schools, any of the sects. So just by relying upon the image of the Buddha or use the image of the Buddha as the object, we can practice in the same way. The Han Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, after practicing in such a way, I think they've transformed greatly. Because at the beginning, you can observe that they have either quick-tempered and they're really they have this agitation. And after practicing this particular meditation, their personality and character transformed. Therefore, I really hope that you could invest time in further investigating and practicing it. This particular practice of meditation, I think, back in around 1 or 2 decades ago, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche taught on this. And this particular practice was already translated 2 decades ago. The entire text of the great biography of Shakyamuni Buddha is not translated, but this particular exercise or meditation is transformed. I think the teaching is very similar with how I feel. According to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, he really placed a great importance onto this practice because he said that it's really difficult to practice Maha'ati or Mahayoga or Mahamudra, but this practice, you can practice it. According to Rinzin Trekcho, Rinzin Trekcho, he received this teaching, and then later on, he started propagating this teaching in the West. I think back in 2002, I taught in mainland China in different places. This time, I'll use 4 classes to teach this practice, the entire practice. I think 4 classes is rather short, and I'm really rushing it. It would be really the best if I can use 7 or 8 classes to teach this, but I think this time we have different people listening, different audience of different capacity listening to this teaching. People without faith, you can view the Buddha as someone who was a great sage in human history and made a great contribution. Even if you are a non-believer like that and think of Buddha like that, then you can also practice according to this practice. The Christians could also use the Christians' way of taming their own mind. Any way of taming your mind and keep up a practice is great. My great hope is that for all the lay practitioners and masters, I really hope that you could invest more time in studying it, because I don't have enough time to further explain it in a more detailed way. But this text has so much pith instructions given by Khenpo Rinpoche. For meditators, whatever kind of questions that you encounter during your meditation session, in fact, inside this text, it has all the answers. In fact, all the complete answers. For people without the interest or the kind of curiosity in studying, then your questions should be answered by this text, and I really encourage you to then study this. Today, we move on to the second part. It talks about the yoga of shamatha and vipassana, visualizing the Buddha. This method of meditation is quite important for us who are longing for the liberation. In the Mahavaipoya Mahasamgata Sutra, it says that the Tathagata taught that only meditation can lead to Buddhi. Thus, one should always take delight in meditation, which will swiftly lead one to the attainment of Bodhi. As I told you earlier, lots of schools and corporations, what they teach is to just relax. And this particular method is a bit different than those kind of methods. If you practice according to this method, then you will be able to swiftly attain the Bodhi. And next it talks about how to practice it, the actual practice. When training the yogas of shamatha and vipassana by focusing on the body of our teacher, the Buddha, infuse your mind with precious bodhicitta to wish attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. At first, in the first chapter that we learned was the merit and the theory of meditation. It talks about how if we search for the mind, inside or outside, you won't be able to attain it. I don't think I need to extensively explain it, so I'm just going to briefly talk about it according to the words and sentences composed by Mipa Rinpoche. I translated this about, 17 years ago, and when I then revisit the Tibetan version and try to proofread it again, I think there are maybe one or two words that's a little bit omitted, but in general, I don't think there are too much problem with it. It's easy to understand. You can never get a perfect translation. Even for the greatest translators in history, they could make some mistakes even during proofreading. Their misspellings and typos and some omission and so on. So no one really clapped for me, therefore I clapped for myself for such a translation. This kind of like is not genuine because it sounds like I asked for it or something. It almost seems kind of hypocritic. So generate bodhicitta. Let it be meditating on the image of the Buddha or any types of meditation. The first step is to take refuge and then generate bodhicitta. And then you think in such a way, at this time when I have obtained the support of freedom and reached and met Tathagata's teaching, I will put aside all worldly activities which, although such practice as making offering to the Tathagata's form and so on, to generate immeasurable merit, these accumulation of merit based on material wealth, after all, are something that Tathagata advised mainly for householders. Over here, there's a deletion of a negative result. You should contemplate in such a way. It says, now we've already gained this body that is endowed with the precious qualities, and we have the opportunity of practicing Dharma. This is extremely precious. Don't even thinking about being the kind of person so busy in this world without any time of practicing. We've already gained free time to practice. Although it is quite important to accumulate merit, but this kind of teaching is mainly for lay practitioners. But for renunciates, for monastics, for the highest level of practice is to meditate upon the image of the Buddha. Yes, it does accumulate merit when you build the statues of the Buddha, and making offering to the Buddha, it accumulates great merit. But what exceeds that is to meditate upon the image of the Buddha with shamatha and vipassana. So, I will practice this as much as I can. The stories of 8 bodhisattvas in the first chapter on Manjushri, where it talks about there are the there are the bhikshus who then would make offering to the relics of the Buddha. But that's really not the most important. What's most important is to listen, to contemplate, and to practice the Dharma. That is what the practitioners should do. And it talks about how the 3,000-fold world are filled with the offering to the Tathagatas. But that merit of making such an offering is still not as great as listening and listening to even one stanza of teaching from the Tathagata. This is quite important. Just as in the Madhyamika Avatara says that it's quite important to make offering to generate merit, but it's more important to also then listen to the Dharma teachings. For those of you who are capable of making such offering, that's wonderful. For those of you who don't have enough wealth to make such offering, you can then make the offering of the Dharma, that is the inner offering, by practicing the Dharma. So as Buddhists, we should follow the teaching of the Buddha and then practice accordingly. What do we do when we practice then? In particular, throughout the course of the beginningless time, we have been disturbed day and night without break by all kinds of conceptual thoughts rather than the steering of wind or clouds or waves of the ocean, and have been brought low. Not only have we failed accomplishing a single remarkable quality, we are afflicted by all manners of suffering. We have no freedom, that we're covered by the dark clouds and we're on the waves of the ocean, have no freedom of our own fate, but manipulated by the outer conditions. And then it says that since that is so, I will not free myself, however I can from the mire of these different conflicting thoughts. We should really contemplate in such a way that I should practice diligently, because look, life is so difficult. Life as a human being, this human body is so difficult to obtain, and it's so precious. And now I finally even encountered the correct Dharma. I finally encountered the good friend or the good teacher. Now I have all the favorable conditions. I should then seize such opportunity and practice diligently, because in the past I've been dwelled in the mire of dark clouds, in the waves of ocean, and without any freedom of myself, for myself. But now I have all the freedom to then liberate myself. I have all the favorable conditions. So we should have a sense of passion. We should have a sense of diligence and happiness to then practice, because knowing that it's so difficult to obtain the human body, so difficult to encounter the correct Dharma, then why shouldn't I seize such opportunity to practice? Don't be like jaded practitioners who only take those in the surface meaning, but not understanding what it means. Since that is so, I will not free myself, however I can, from the mire of these different conflicting thoughts. None of us want to have afflictions and conflicting thoughts. So what do? You should then focus on the Tathagata's body, because even just for an instant, focusing on the Tathagata's body, which is such great merit and significance. Of course, it's wonderful if you can practice Mahāti or Mahamudra, but if you can't, the best way is to practice by meditating up on seeing the image of the Buddha, or use Buddha as the object of your meditation. That is really the best way. Just as the Kinsa Rinpoche said how if you don't have the level of understanding Mahaati and Mahamudra, then the best thing, in fact, is no less important than those two, is to meditate by the object of the Buddha's image. In doing so, I shall achieve the yoga of shamatha and Vipassana in the proper way. So, by using the object of Tathagata's, the image of Tathagata's body, then we can achieve the yogas of shamatha and vipassana with an intense pledge and supplication of one point in the yearning, thinking that Guru and Buddha and Bodhisattvas, I supplicate you, grant your blessing so that I may succeed. Well, whomsoever Bodhisattva or Buddha has a good relationship with me, please grant your blessing so that your blessing would let me continue my practice without any interruption, because it's quite important. Please bless me really, really hard so that I can practice for 7 days without any interruption. And once you supplicate with such great longing, then you will receive the special blessing from the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Guru, your lineage master. And then your dualistic thoughts will become the thoughts of the Tathagatas. In the Pratyupana Samadhi Sutra, where it talks about give lots of teaching on how to meditate with the object of the Buddha and the merit of it. It has a story inside it. It says that once there was a prince who had great wrong views towards Buddhism, towards the Dharma. And despite many people's request of him to study the Dharma, and he rejected them all. He once heard that someone told him there was a really beautiful Buddha statue in a monastery, and at that time, knowing so, I guess the prince really liked to go out and travel, so he went out and he saw the Buddha statue. He thought to himself, "Well, it's nice," and after that, people around him asking him to prostrate to the Buddha, and he refused that because he felt that was not necessary. And a bhikshu then told him, "Well, at least could you then chant Namo Buddha with me?" And with such merit, by chanting Namo Buddha, he then confessed all his previous misdeeds and then attained samadhi later on. There are people who are so difficult to accept the Buddha or Buddhism. And then I guess you can skillfully ask them to say that, "Well, I know there's a beautiful attraction where they have something beautiful, and we should go together." And then after you get into the monastery, you can point it to them and say that this is the Buddha statue that I mentioned before. It's really gorgeous. So the image is really beautiful. For people with good connection, they would then give rise to really give rise to admiration to the Buddha. We have lots of Buddha statues over here. I really suggest all of you to see them often. Do not try to see my face often. See the face of the Buddha. There are people who would say that, I really like my guru. My guru is so chubby and so sweet. They never really say that how marvelous and beautiful beautiful the Buddha and Manjushri is. I myself, I really like the beautiful Buddha statue. When I went to India, it was very difficult for us to find a gold-plated Buddha statue. At that time, there's no factory that makes those beautiful Buddha statue that's gold-plated yet. I think now it's not. Now the technology and their skills are probably even more advanced than then. But when I went to New Delhi, I saw those beautiful statues, and I was very moved and very happy about that. And when I went there, I really wanted to buy more of those Buddha statues. Are you falling asleep? I can hear from his sound that he's not paying attention. So it's quite important to gaze into the Buddha statue. It has great merit. So those are the preliminary practices for this practice. And then remove yourself, first of all, from hustle and bustle. At that time, first you make the vow that I will practice diligently. You should go to a place without impediments to meditative concentration, such as people moving about during the day or hubbub at night, such as traffic, such as machinery, such as tractors, dogs, different kind of sound, and those kind of noise would really disturb the meditators. Some great masters in the past, they would go to quiet places to meditate. Even if you don't have such opportunity to go to quiet mountains and caves, you can at least stay in the quiet retreat home or your retreat house. Any place that is really quiet and really quite away from any disturbance, that's quite important. And then you can sit on a cushion that is comfortable, not too soft, because if it's too soft, you would then sink into that cushion. It's not good. Or if it's too hard, if the cushion is too hard, then it would be really tiring after a little while. So it's the best to find the favorable or the best condition that is not too hard, not too soft, not too cold, not too hot. And those then makes your mind stream with preliminary dharmas. So preliminary dharma is not the preliminary practices that we call mundro. It's not that. It's really just how you should prepare yourself before the actual practice. That's what it means over here. And then place in front of you, at whatever height and position is comfortable, a beautiful and pleasing image of Tathagata. This Buddha statue is probably the best. It should be between thumb and your middle finger. That's the perfect size for meditating upon. this kind of Buddha statue. Over here, the meditation visualization is very well described. You should then place a beautiful and pleasing image of the Tathagata, the king of Shakyas, which has been drawn correctly by a skilled artist with the power of aspiration and the recall Tathagata's blessing and by reciting the mantra. It's okay sometimes if you can bring a small one when you're traveling. Some Buddhist masters in the past that they would bring something much smaller, but I would suggest you to bring something about this size. It's quite important for you to have a properly sized Buddha statue in your shrine. Or pictures. Some of the computer painting of Buddha, or even you can put some of the picture of the Buddha on your screen. But I'm not sure if you stare into such screen. If you stare into your screen, I think it's not good for your eyes. But maybe you can wear some special glasses to protect your eyes in such a way. Anyhow, with the power of aspiration, recall the Tathagata's blessing, and by reciting the essence of causation mantra, consecrate the image. Of course, it's good to ask some masters to consecrate your image, but if you don't have such opportunity, at least it's good to chant 7 or 21 times of the essence of causation mantra and then spread some rice on it, and then it's consecrated. Many people don't know how to retreat, how to do retreat, but over here it talks. It is quite clear. It is quite clearly described in this instruction. Having done so, place it at whatever distance is right for you to look at, neither too close nor too far. It depends on your personal vision, and you can test it out. So both of your eyes should then look at the image with admiration as if it were Tathagata's actual form, and then think. Sometimes you contemplate with your eyes closed, sometimes you open your eyes and then look at the Tathagata's form again. So what should you contemplate then? It is thinking that this is the Tathagata's actual form. Maybe it's a statue, maybe it's a picture, maybe it's an actual painting, maybe it's on your screen. It doesn't matter. Whatever you see with your eyes is really no other than the Tathagata's actual form. The 2 points that Nippon Rinpoche taught that we studied yesterday was really important. The first one is whatever I see is no other than the form of Tathagata, and the thought of longing to see the Tathagata's form is already Tathagata himself. Since Tathagata is adorned with 32 excellent marks and 80 excellent signs, seeing him is without disharmony. And like the Udambara flower, that is the unusual flower which appears in this world only very few hundred years, the Tathagata then arises from the cause and boundless accumulation of merit and wisdom beyond imagining. Since Tathagata is fully adorned with the 32 excellent marks and 80 excellent signs, seeing him is without disharmony. Of course, for people with faith, once they see such a form, they'll have more they'll have more faith. But for people without faith, and because of such karma, maybe then they will feel even more disgusted by the beautiful signs of Tathagata. So I suggest to you that whenever you go to different places, different monasteries to see the image of the Buddha, then go see the Buddha statue and gaze at the statue. I'm not sure if you read the Great Exertions story. If you haven't, then you can't listen to my class. If you don't read it yourself, just relying on me, that's not good. So you really have to read it, okay? Before next class. If you really want to listen to next class, you should finish your homework. Your homework I gave you yesterday. Without reading the Great Exertions story, then you have to stand up and listen as a punishment for students who didn't finish the homework. I think that's a proper punishment. So by tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow's the deadline. For those of you who didn't finish reading, stand for 1 hour. 1 hour is not too bad. It's good exercise as well. We shouldn't think in such a way that in the world of gods, the extremely clear and steadfast and noble Rupakaya are seen in common by all sentient beings of that world at time. These Rupakaya also teach the Dharma there. And in India, many people who've already seen his form. So when I went to India back in the 90s, I visited Vulture Park and Deer Park and the Vajra seat. I, in fact, felt quite deeply saddened because if I were to have the opportunity of listening to his teaching during his time, that would be so wonderful. I think according to the clothback monk, or the Pudai monk, he then said that in a poem, I was still thinking in lower realms when Buddha appeared. However, when I was born into this world, the Buddha had passed away. How heavy is the negative karma that I had accumulated, such that I missed to see the Buddha's golden body. Thus, I confess. Also, it reminds me of when Shakyamuni Buddha was just born, many sages came to see him, and other sages said to the king that the young prince, if he were to become a king, he would become the universal monarch. If he were to become a teacher, then he would become teachers of all. At that time, another sage who's an older sage, and he started crying. Out of concern, the king asked the sage, "Why are you crying?" And this old sage replied, saying, "Simply by gazing his face, I know that this young prince won't become the king. I know indeed he will become a renunciate, and then he would become the teacher of all." Because the appearance of this young prince looks very different than the universal monarch's appearance. But I'm crying because I will not be able to see the enlightened teacher when he started teaching, because I'm too old. I will be dead by then. And I'm not crying for him, I am really crying for myself. So contemplating on that, I feel really sad because when I am born, not in this, I have not seen the face of the Buddha, but at least I've seen the face of Khenpo Rinpoche. But I really feel quite saddened for those of you who recently got ordained and recently became a Buddhist without seeing the face or having ever met Khenpo Rinpoche, because in my mind, Khenpo Rinpoche, I think in my mind, is the Buddha himself. When I hear that some lay practitioner tells me that back a long time ago I met Khenpo Rinpoche in person and so on, so I would feel that, well, at least this person have met Khenpo Rinpoche, that's of great merit already. This Rupakaya also teach the Dharma there, and they display all kinds of miracles for the benefit of those to be tamed. They also perform various actions, including many different actions, including wrathful, peaceful. All of their actions are all to benefit all sentient beings. Mm-hmm. 昨天我讲的时候有点赶时间。Yesterday I was rushing, and after teaching, I felt a little tired. I think for those of you in my audience are probably also felt a little tired. I have to say, all of you present over here, you do have a good attitude by listening to the Dharma. Your attitudes are quite different than those of from before. Because before, only the monastics over here are behaving rather properly, but the lay practitioners really don't know how to listen to the Dharma. But now I really feel that in the recent years, I feel the lay practitioners have progressed, and your actions and behavior and attitude have all transformed. So I hope that you really continue your listening and contemplating and practicing the Dharma. Do not give up for some random reasons. You should persevere, because if you have faith, whatever things come up in your life, it shouldn't become excuses to give up the Dharma. You should grasp this opportunity, seize this opportunity, and study through different skillful means, such as internet and so on. I know it is very difficult for you to get ordained and become a monastic, because it's really difficult to say for those of you who want to get ordained at this point. But at least you can practice as lay practitioner for now, rather than giving up. Well, the baby is crying. It's probably better to take the baby out so that the baby could have a good cry, and then you can bring him back again. Otherwise, it's quite a bit of suffering for all of us. 这样的就是这是这个佛陀有这样的这种无量的这个方法来就是利益众生。这个无等大师本是释迦牟尼佛呢。可能这个前面的我们的大师，我们的大师的意思。这个无改为无等大师本是。Our teacher Shakyamuni, Buddha, line of the Shakyas, was born into the royal line of Shakyas and eventually attained enlightenment, after which he taught the Dharma to Bodhisattva Shravakas and many other gathering of being at Vulture Peak and elsewhere. He went through all the 12 deeds. at the beginning, being born in the palace, enjoy the palace life, renounce its life, and then practiced with the aesthetics and attain enlightenment, and then appeared to enter into parinirvana. So at that time, the Buddha then taught bodhisattvas, shakyas, and beings of different capacities. We should contemplate at this point that the Buddha was teaching in India at that time. He was really there to carried out all these Dharma activities over there. This is how the Buddha benefited all the sentient beings and led them to liberation. Many sutras talked quite a bit of the stories of what the Buddha did in India. I know many people who practice meditation by not thinking of a thing. Well, this is okay, but according to Mipa Rinpoche, there are two methods of meditation. One is meditation by abiding, and the other one is meditation by contemplation. Those two methods are both very good. While keeping in mind these qualities and attributes, think this is what the Tathagata's form is like in shape and appearance. The Tathagata is the embodiment of discipline, samadhi, supreme knowledge, complete freedom, and gathering of the wisdom, and seeing of complete liberation, and so on. He is endowed with immaculate qualities and are beyond imagining and cannot be adequately conveyed even onto the very limits of space itself. He went through all the obstacles and difficulties in his past lives. He offered his body and offered everything that he had to accumulate merit and to benefit sentient beings. Many stories by Ashvaghosha and stories according to different sutras. Do not think of them only as a folklore or fairy tale. Do not take them as some kind of fairy tale, because this is not reasonable. Just because it's far away, just because all of those things that happened are long time ago, and it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. His immaculate qualities, immaculate merits are beyond our imagination. In the great biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Brahmin Samudra Raja generated a bodhicitta, and in such ways, for 3 immeasurable eons, by practicing the 6 paramitas, he gathered inconceivable and inexpressible accumulations of merit and wisdom, and was freed from all obscurations by conquering the 4 maras. He completely perfected all excellent qualities without exception, and having obtained the kaya of great wisdom, of omniscience, he became the refuge, protector, and friend of all sentient beings until the end of time. We should really contemplate upon these. We should contemplate upon all of these past lives and what Shakyamuni Buddha did in the past, just like a movie is showing in front of our eyes, or thinking back with remnants of your own childhood and so on. So in front of our eyes, we should then visualize the story of the Buddha showing in front of our eyes and passing by in front of our eyes. Let go of everything in your life, let go of all your other preoccupations in your mind, only focusing on the story, on the experience of the Buddha. If you really can't remember, then you can prepare some of the stories, some of the biography of the Buddha, and you can read and then contemplate, read and contemplate again. And by contemplating upon this, the strength, the energy is completely different than reading and research, just like how the scholars and academics do nowadays. The study of the scholars are very different. The method of study of scholars are very different than those of us who are practitioners. Think in such a way, since that is due to the power of Tathagata, past aspiration and inconceivable wisdom, how fortunate we are, and generate a great faith by recalling the Buddha. That's because of the great aspiration by the Buddha from the past. Even if you prostrate for 3 times a night, or chanting Namo Buddha Shakyamuni, or the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, Phuntsog Rinpoche has empowerment called planting the virtuous root of liberation, where it says that even with the mind of dualism of thinking of the Buddha, you already still planted the root of being liberated. They all have merit. Even with a dualistic mind, you prostrate or chanting mantra or seeing the image of the Buddha, they all have merit. In the words of my perfect teacher, although Patrul Rinpoche said that with disturbed mind, then you practice and visualize. If you visualize and practice with a mind that's full of disturbance, you get only a mere of merit. But in fact, if you could do that, it still generates great merit. Still, then without your attention being too tightly or loosely focused, but in a leisurely manner, without letting your mindfulness and attentiveness decline, focus your mind continuously on the appearance of the Tathagata as a form. I think we constantly feel that we are of poverty. We have this poverty mentality where we feel that we don't have enough. We don't know that we don't have enough merit, that we've already seen the Tathagata already. Some say that in some aspects, yes, we have different afflictions, we have a different we have different kind of obstacles. We feel this poverty of ourselves, but at least we've already seen the body of the Buddha, or the image of the Buddha. We've already met the Guru, who's all perfect, and we've already studied the Dharma. I think it's quite important of seeing the image of the Buddha. As it says in the Dhyana Samadhi Sutra of visualizing Buddha, it says that because of not meeting the Buddha, people in later times would perform evil actions. For such people, let them visualize the image of the Buddha. In fact, visualizing the image is no different from seeing me, Shakyamuni Buddha, in person. I think nowadays some Buddhists who they're Buddhists nowadays, they don't pay great attention to the Shakyamuni Buddha's statue, and rather they place great importance to the guru. They would say that you're a guru. Well, what kind of guru are you? Are you my root guru? Yes, there are gurus which are better. There are the ones who are probably not that great, especially if you get close to them, you will start to see that you have more afflictions than you used to be. Yes, we say that you should view the teacher as the Buddha, but if you have the faith in the Buddha statue, at least you won't have affliction because of that, because it won't, because the Buddha statue won't cause any afflictions, and the Buddha statue won't be treating you nice today and not so nice tomorrow, which could be a cause of affliction for you. In the Han Buddhism, it's quite important. This text, the Dhyana Samadhi Sutra of Visualizing Buddha, is quite a famous sutra. It talks quite a bit about how to visualize the Buddha. Yes, it's quite a pity that we didn't see the Buddha ourselves during his time, but at least we already have such great merit that we've seen the image of the Buddha statue, the golden Buddha statue, or the bronze Buddha statue. It's important to have a good statue in your own shrine, in your center. I see that people would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their appeal, but they would only spend 300 on a Buddha statue. Then I guess the Buddha is of a lower status than your bank, which would have probably cost tens of thousands of dollars. And in your tens of thousands of dollars of bag, you have $100 of Buddha statue. If you don't have any money to buy Buddha statue or don't have too much, then just something simple, made of rock, made of wood, then those are fine. If you have the material providing, if you have sufficient wealth, then it would be really great to have some golden or silver or diamond statue. Do they have diamond statue even? No, you don't know? Okay, if you don't know, I don't know either.
一遍入世这个观想啊，就是一遍呢就是随念佛陀，同时呢就是增起坚定的信心，还需要什么注意的呢？就是说这个观破这个碎念，就是画像的时候，就是它的这个画像和动作的这种心思呢，不能过激，不能过错。紧张呢就是
tentatively and attentiveness decline. Focus your mind continuously on the appearance of the Buddha's form. If you are too tight, it's not helpful. If you're too loose, it's not going to succeed either. practice, you shouldn't be too loose or too tight. Or anything, you shouldn't go on to any extremes. Do not have any extreme faith either. At the beginning, you have lots of faith and lots of devotion. As a beginner, when they just first time get over here, they get so excited and overly enthusiastic. And at the beginning, if you used all your energy, you probably don't have any energy left at the end of the Dharma assembly. So at the beginning, do not get overexcited, and then at the end, do not get overly cold. Sometimes I would think about those people who, when I first met them, their enthusiastic and passion really shocked me. And now it shocks me to the extent how cold they've become. Do not get too diligent, nor too lazy. Anything, we should find a middle way where it is most comfortable. And this is quite important by Magic Lobdra, and do not get too tight nor too loose. Distancing yourself from any thought. When we chant the Buddha name, we should use the mind to chant the Buddha name, and not rather than as it is said in the Han Buddhism poem, where it says that you are only chanting the name of the Buddha with your mouth and not with your mind. If you're just chanting Amidava or Vajrasattva, but without visualizing, without thinking of the Buddha. Just as Vajrasattva that we're going to chant this time, every year we would ask everyone to chant 400,000 times of Vajrasattva mantra. Usually, I ask people to practice about 2 weeks in advance. On June the 1st, I went to celebrate the International Children's Day with the kids, so I forgot to make the announcement this year. Over 10 years in June is really the period of time where it has lots of events, so I forgot about it this year. Wherever you are, you can then pledge to chant the Vajrasattva vow. In fact, this Sunday I'm going to give a teaching on the confess, how to confess. So that class will be on Sunday. This time we will then practice together, and that will accumulate the merit altogether. It's quite important to practice this and finish chanting the 400,000 of Vajrasattva mantra, the short mantra. In fact, the ones of higher capacity should be able to finish the chanting within 7 days, and the ones with a medium capacity should be able to finish within 1 month, and the ones with lower capacity can finish it within 3 months. Just as how we should practice our body, exercise our body as a practice, we should also exercise our mind and prepare for death and confess all of our sins. We've made lots of mistakes and conducted lots of non-virtuous deeds. And by chanting the Vajrasattva mantra, we should be able to confess all of our misdeeds in the past. It does have such power, so I really encourage you to one-pointedly visualize Vajrasattva and participate in this Dharma assembly wholeheartedly. Eventually, you should focus one-pointedly without interruption as much as you can. In short, practice progressively the 9 methods of mental abiding until you achieve one-pointedness of a mind of the desire realm.
上述的这些修行内容啊，就是这样观修佛陀是非常殊胜的。在观相的时候，我们可以观想
of great merit when you can visualize the Buddha, and during such you should look and focus upon the body in general, or in order to obtain the noble Dharma and to pacify dullness, focus particularly on the Ushnisha, the crown of the Buddha's head, because Ushnisha is the manifestation of immeasurable merit of the Buddha. Alternatively, in order to obtain samadhi and pacify agitation, you can concentrate directly on the enlightened mind's glorious knot, that is, the auspicious knot at the heart center of the Buddha, or accomplishing great merit and gain happiness, you can concentrate on the appearance of the coil of hair, that is, the white hair. Once you pull it from it is said on the sutra that if you pull that coil of hair, it could go very, very far. That's one of the specialty of the special character or trait of the Buddha, and that's between the Buddha's eyebrow, which is white as a snow conch and curls to the right. In order to make the great melodious sound of the Dharma pervade the whole world and to benefit sentient being by teaching the Dharma, fix your mind on the form of the throat, the source of 60 qualities of melodious speech at the conch of the Dharma, with its 3 lines and so on. Wherever you feel inclined to focus, concentrate your mind there unwaveringly. In the words of my perfect teacher, how it describes the way we should visualize Vajrasattva, sometimes we should then fix our mind on the face, on the appearance, sometimes we should fix on the adornments, sometimes we should fix our mind on the beauty of the body, sometimes we should then focus on the merit and the deeds that the Tathagatas all conducted to benefit sentient beings. You can visualize whichever way, but your mind should then fixed on the mind. You should then fix the mind on the body of the Tathagata, and we will practice together for 3 minutes. Whatever method you could use.
下面呢，会讲这样的这种观修啊，就是这样的观修。
This kind of visualization.
就是下面讲到这个五种觉数，这个五种觉数在修行过程当中很重要。刚开始的时候呢，就像我们这个受力。
Now we're going to talk about the 5 types of experience. When focusing your mind like this, at the very beginning, it is like catching a snake. The mind is so wild and untamed that the first stage of meditation is called the experience of movement, like a waterfall. Niagara Fall in Canada, and many places. If you've ever seen a waterfall, you can probably reminisce yourself with how your mind works, because at first you will notice your mind is moving really fast, just like the waterfall. It goes very swiftly, and the mind is very wild. So this stage of meditation is called the experience of movement, like a waterfall. At this stage, you have the impression that your mind is in constant motion. From the sutra requested by Sabahu, this mind is like lightning, wind, and clouds, like the waves of a giant ocean, cunning, indulging in everything it desires, moving, staying. I must certainly tame it. The mind can be tamed, although right now it's like a wild monkey. It seems it's untamable, but it can be tamed. But just like clouds, sometimes it gathers and become really cloudy, and sometimes it disperses and become really clear. The sky would become really clear. So just like that, our mind can be tamed and can be changed. If we debate and talk every day, then our mind won't be tamed, so I have to meditate. I think since all sentient beings have fallen under the sway of this completely distracted mind, I will persevere without giving in to laziness, come what that may. I think many people really do attach great importance to meditation. It is really good that you listen and contemplate the Dharma, but what's more important is to practice it. Of course, you do need listening and contemplate. Otherwise, how do you know how to practice, right? Then it says that I will persevere without giving in to laziness. Laziness is quite a big obstacle. According to the treatise on great perfection of wisdom, where it says that the attitude of laziness destroys all kinds of merit, just like the great fire burns down the wild forest, which reminds me of the great forest fire that burned down acres of forest in United States and Canada. Trees and grass, all of those, even houses would be burned down with such great fire. So that is laziness that could destroy all kinds of merit. Therefore, I really think you should be diligent and persevere. Do not only think about eat, food and drink and movie and playing with your cell phone. If you are doing all those kind of things as a Buddhist, then it's such a pity. You're just wasting your time. Nowadays, I do understand that there are so many different kinds of distractions in this world, but if we're lured away by those, then it's such a pity. As Buddhists, we should have a requirement for ourselves. We should have a discipline. So try. Sometimes I require myself to teach. So this is a way how I discipline myself. Whenever I go out and teach, then I try my best to add classes into my schedule. Otherwise, I will get distracted. That is why I require those of you who study outside of the monastery to form groups. To study in groups would force you to spend your time in studying and contemplating and practice, which is a meaningful use of your time rather than spend your time according to your dualistic thoughts, because your conceptual and dualistic thoughts are then very habitual, and it could be very naughty and lead you to places that you really don't want to be. According to the way of a bodhisattva, it is says that as long as you persevere and familiarize yourself with that, you will definitely be able to succeed in them. And by persevering this way, discursive thoughts which were so apparent and rough, wild and turbulent, will settle down slightly after a while. So this is the first step. This is then according to the 9 ways of resting the mind that the first experience describes the first 2 stages, which is resting the mind and resting mind longer. But there will be business of many different thoughts. That's just like a bubbling stream of restless mental activity. That is called the second meditation experience of attainment, like a river flowing through a narrow canyon. The example is used because although a river running through a narrow canyon is still very turbulent and noisy, it is a little slower than a waterfall. If you keep persevering and continue the practice, then you will feel that inwardly the mind thoughts are slowing down and you are able to remain with object of focus. So this part talks about the third and fourth out of the 9 ways of resting the mind, which is continuously resting the mind and fully settling the mind. And then we're talking about the third experience. If you examine carefully, you will see that you are still involved in a continuous stream of many subtle conceptual thoughts. This is the third experience, called the experience of familiarization, like a general flowing stream. Just like how our thoughts are. Yes, coarsely, it seems that we don't really have lots of thoughts, but subtly, there are many thoughts that are still bubbling up. And this is pacifying the mind and a complete pacification of the mind out of the 9 ways of resting the mind. I believe I gave the talk in maybe Yale University. During that talk, I also talked about this, and in the Luminous Essence, it has a description of the 9 ways of resting the mind, as well as the chapter of meditation in the way of Bodhisattva.
欢喜的修行。
When you look,
这个时候呢，就是
when you
那
look
么
at
这个精进可以就是入于这个正
when
轨。
you look at a
如此
stream
修
from
正以后，
afar, it
细微的
seems
这
to
些
be
非
still,
美
but
人
you
呢，逐
cannot
渐消失了。
tell
将
that
自
it
己的
is
心
moving.
专
But
注于
when
任
you
何一个
get
处
up
缘境，
close,
那
you
么
see
都
that
能
it
安
is
住很
moving a
长
little
时间。
unrippled.
尤其是外
From
缘
this
的这
point,
些
if you
纷
don't
扰呢，
stop
全部都是不可
persevering,
动摇，我们
but
按住的
keep
心。那么这个时候呢，进入了
on
第四个阶
striving,
段，
you
叫
will
什么
have
呢？
less
就是大
hardship
海
and
之
suffering
源
than
里
before.
波
So
涛的
exert
这种温故
yourself
知书。
continuously.
这是
By
第四个
practicing
温故
like
知书。
this, even the
其实
movement of
我
subtle
们今天时
conceptual
间关
thoughts
系
will
不
be
光讲，但
pacified
是
as
希望你
long
们还
as
是
you
对这
have
些
conditions
好好
for
看，因为
the
我们修行过程
focus.
当
You
中，
will
如
be
果不
able
修
to
的话，没有
remain
这
as
些跟
long
你没
as
有
you
关系，就
like.
是
Yet this
你
does
天天
not
玩
mean
就
that
是这些
you
确
are
实跟你
completely
没有关系，他也不
impervious
管你，你也
to
不管他。
circumstances. This
但
is
是
the
我们
fourth
修行人来
meditative
讲还是很
experience
重要的，
called
就
the
是
experience
就
of
我们的话，好
stability
像我也
like
不
an
是修
ocean
行
free
人。
from
我
waves.
说我们修行人的话，我还是修的觉得不是
For
最
those of
差
you
的，
who
不是最
care
好的。
about meditation, who care
那
about
么就是
this
这
kind
个，
of
那么这
experience,
个
you
时候呢，
should
已经完
really
全信住下了，
practice
非常稳固。
afterwards.
所以呢，用了这个比
And
喻啊，就是这个里面就是助信当中的话呢，就是那个助一境，就是安住于一境的，就是第8个那个助信法
And。this
然后
is
之后的话呢，就是
the
既不需要
eighth
庆
one,
祝
that's
啊，
one
就是
pointedness
在你
out
修
of the
行
nine
就
ways.
长期下去的话呢，最
And
后到
having
达了
reached
第5
this
个阶
far
段，
without
如
having
山往一
to
般的这个
undergo
文
great
武阶段
hardship,
啊，
the
究竟
fifth
结束，究竟
meditation
结束。
experience
那么这个
perfection
时候呢，
like
就是结束
mountain
就
will
已经
arise
到了
as
这个到
long
位
as
了。
you
那么
continue
这
to
个结束与
familiarize
无尽
yourself
的
with
这
the
种
stage
行为呢，
over
就是也
time.
可以就是
This
一元贯到，
is
一元贯
synonymous
到，
with
将自己的
effortless
心专注
engagement.
于任
The
何一
mind
处，
naturally
如浪
mixes
就是
with
自
whatever
然
you
而
focus
融
on,
入这个
and
法当
without
中。
a
不
need
管
for
是你
any
灌到
effort.
佛像上也好，灌
Remain
禅里
steadily
也好，
wherever
灌
you
到
want.
什么方
Let
面
it
的话
be
呢，特别容易得到
visualizing,
前岸的
let
这
it
些
be
人的话，
practicing
心
or
就是
chanting
荡
or
然
anything.
什么
It would be very
荡
easy
就
for you to get
然
into
后
that.
就心方
Your
就是
mind
方就是你散射到哪里的话也可以
can
的，
be
安住
then
的话也可以的。
extended
现在我们的
to
心
the
不是这样
outside.
的，就
You
像一
can
个
then
3、
also
4岁的
retract
小
your
孩一
mind
样，就是让他
inside.
安住就起来
It
了，
will
让他
listen
起
to
来
you.
就是坐下来了。
Rather than
我们心让
nowadays,
他安
our
住的话，
mind
他
is
就
like a
散射到外
3-year-old
面，
child
然后他散射去的话，又
who
开
do
始
not listen to
出
you.
回来了，疲倦呐，就是这个沉掉啊，就是这样的。然后，
But at this
那么这个
stage,
时候自然呢，就是
you will
明
be
然安
able
住于
to
此法当中，
then
人和分别念呢都无法动摇。这个时候已经到了所谓的一界一心啊。
at that
自私
time,
的
you'll
心
be
呢，
able
就
to
是
then
能
control
按
and
住
tame
各
your
种
mind.
不同的
Conceptual
这种
thoughts
接
no
触
longer
呢，
have the
在这
power
个
to
时候
shake
可
the
以出
mind.
现。
This
因为
is
一
the
界一心当中呢，
accomplishment of
所
what
有
is
的圣
called
徒啊，所
one
有的宗的
pointedness
学过
of
居
a
士论的
mind
人，大
of
家都知道，
desire
有了
realm.
这种禅定境界的
For those
什
of
么
you
样
who
的
studied
功德都会去
Abhidharma,
出
you
现。
probably know
在这种
this
境界
state
当中，
that is
安
called
住
the
修
one
行的话呢，能
pointedness
获
of
得所有的
a
身
mind
心
of
清
desire
安的这
realm.
种
That's
境
the
界
fourth
啊，
level
如能
of
得到身心
meditative
清安的话
realm.
呢，就是
And
将心专注于
at that level, you'll be able
身心
to
呢，就是可
obtain
以在
different
很
kind
多
of
天当中是微妙
insights
的
and
再
miraculous
怎么样，我们
powers.
有
For
些人
those
可
of you
能
who
得到
studied
这种身
Abhidharma
心清安的
probably
话，
know
不管
this
是
more
为这个
clearly.
佛法理
And
解也
then
好，
at this time,
为
various
做任何事
experiences
情的话
resulting
呢，好
from the
像没
mind's
有劳
abiding
累
will
的，
also
这种
arise
叫这
when you
个
have
身心
become
清安，
familiar
就是
with the state,
整个
mind
身
and
体
body
呢
are
如
said
棉
to
花一
become
般，非
supple.
常透
So
柔，
what is
而且
supple?
内心呢
It
也是
is
充满
not
这个
even
明晰啊、安
you
乐之
are
感觉，不是今天的
preoccupied
是
with
出
many
明天
things.
的，
You are
今
still
天也不舒服，明
very
天也
much at
痛苦，就
ease.
今天也伤
And
心，
as
无
body
缘无
and
故当
mind
中觉得
become
特别
workable
生
this
气
way,
啊，
whatever
爆发
object
雷
of
霆，
focus you
不
settle
是
your
这样
mind
的。如果
upon,
得到清
even
安的
if you
话呢，
remain
每
for
天
several
的
days,
是
there is no
就是
sense
这
of
种这个小
at
细细的
all
那种，
either of the body and mind become unable to
就
cope.
一直像
So
这
people
个
who
什
attained
么大
such
肚
a
弥勒
level
佛
of
一样的，
meditation,
一
they
天天就
they're
这样
really
子。
happy.
然后
They
如
don't
果没有
get
得到
bothered
清安
by
的，其实修行
different
好不
kinds
好，
of
这
afflictions, you will know if the person is a good practitioner, because you will see that the person with good insights and good practice, that person will be able to bring happiness to people around them, and people who are not good at practicing, who don't practice, rather they bring rather a sense of turbulence to people who group around them. This is very much related to their practice, because they can get along with the people around them if it's a good practitioner. You can definitely tell by their actions and their interpersonal relationships. Also, at that time, you will be able to feel that your mind is really supple. And this suppleness is rough and heavy at first and has a sense of solidity, but with familiarity, the heaviness fades away and there arises an unwavering shamatha that is extremely fine. That is extremely fine and clear, like a shadow, a mirror of meditative concentration that is accorded with the main part of the practice. This kind of meditation has the name of shamatha. So for those of you who don't know what shamatha is, since it is a mind endowed with suppleness, it also corresponds to the aspect of the first meditative absorptions capable preparatory stage, that there is nothing that this kind of meditative concentration is incapable of, be it meditation with conceptual focus or meditation without concepts. For good practitioners, they can practice by listening to the class, by meditating upon using the object of the Buddha image, or by chanting mantra, by working. So the good practitioner could practice with anything, and bad practitioners cannot practice with the most favorable conditions. There are several ways of counting the stages of accomplishing shamatha, such as for mental engagement or the 6 powers, but essentially they're all included in the following. The mind remains totally concentrated with mindfulness and attentiveness for as long as possible on the object of focus. As you familiarize yourself with these 5 meditation experiences explained above will arise. When you have accomplished shamatha in this way, the strength of the mind's workability gives the body a gleaming complexion and makes it comfortable and strong. The mind too becomes clear and lucid and settles on any object of your choice. Body and mind are saturated with immeasurable joy and bliss. So what's the most important is that the affliction are reduced. Knowing that whether you've had a good meal, you look at the cheek of a person, but nowadays it's hard to say because there's so many different kinds of makeup. But in Tibet we say this, and we would say that whomsoever listened and contemplated lots of Dharma, then the body and mind of that person is really supple and very pliable. But the person who've practiced a lot have very little afflictions. According to the King of Samadhi Sutra, it says that a bodhisattva never experiences a fervent affliction. They enjoy the state of sacred bliss instead of the joy of food. Both their mind and body are always in this cool state of peace. There are the benefits of endeavoring in meditation. At that moment, when you practice to such a state, you will feel this immeasurable joy and bliss arising. By the strength of merit of practicing shamatha with this focus on form of the Buddha, and through the Buddha's blessings, you will come to see the Buddha either in actuality or reality, or in dreams. You will receive Dharma teachings and so on. All sorts of different excellent qualities will arise in your mind. This is quite important. So today we will stop over here, and I prepared to see many of you who come to Larungar, but because I had meeting beforehand, and also I'm going to have meeting later, so maybe we can have it later.